today that presented itself is a fantastic one, both for the work that Ben and I deliver across the country, representing and supporting people with learning disabilities and autistic people, but secondarily and much more importantly for Daisy. So what I will say is, and you've heard me probably speak before about this, the privilege I have, and I speak for Ben as well, is to be able to work with people who are truly, often disenfranchised, disregarded from services. We are getting something wrong for people with learning disabilities and autistic people. You know this, across the NHS and beyond. And the greatest part of what we do is to be able to learn and understand from those people who receive services. I say this all the time, but they often have the solutions that we're looking for, but we don't, for some reason, still hear that. We don't invite it. So it's a privilege to be able to work with people who do have those solutions or want a platform to be able to talk about what they think. So I acquainted, and thank you to Hilary, with Daisy and Sarah, her mum, and I'm so pleased that they're able to come today to give up their time, but also to hear Daisy, and I don't need to say much else other than it's a particularly powerful presentation, and it might have elements of fun in there. So I'm going to hand over to Daisy. I hope you enjoy it, and thanks ever so much, Daisy. Come on.
Hiya. I was warned that I should probably be nice to you today. But unfortunately, that's not really why I'm here, and I don't really do it very well. But I am here to be, and what I do quite well, is be funny. It reminds me of a joke which I think you will really appreciate and enjoy. What is the difference between God and a doctor? God doesn't think he's a doctor. But okay, down to business, I should stop being silly. I'm here to talk to you about my journey for autism, because I believe that knowledge is power and understanding, and so therefore understanding is power. Now, something you should recognise is that my mum is my carer, and she is now over 60, and she has, I feel like, 101 underlying health conditions of her own. And that and the fact that, as we get older, we get a bit more vulnerable, means that over the last few years, she's become what I believe is called a bit of a frequent flyer in the NHS. Which leads me to either look after myself, or her, and sometimes even both, either in hospital or once she's been discharged and is recovering at home. But apart from that, my mum's frequently in and out, and I feel like they should have a revolving door for her by now, in Lewisham Hospital. I have had my own experiences in the NHS. For instance, last year, shortly before my diagnosis, I had what I call a burnout. I had a huge mental health breakdown. If it was a piece of furniture or a piece of technology, I would advise you, rather than trying to fix it, to get a new one. It was that bad. And I probably would have been sectioned if Lewisham had beds. As it was, I went to A&E overnight for 24 hours. Now the good news here is that when Mum and I have told you that I have specific learning difficulties, you've been brilliant at helping me. For example, 2 years ago my mum fell down the stairs, beginning of Advent, and went to hospital, and when she was in A&E, they found out that her blood oxygen was extremely low, which prolonged her stay, and exaggerated her injuries, but she has scoliosis and a protruding disc which she landed on. And I came and visited her, and she wanted to go for a walk, and I thought, because of the oxygen, I thought she needed a backup in case she needed to have a rest, so I suggested a wheelchair, which the nurse agreed with and said that I should go and get. My mum took to the side the nurse and discreetly said that I had learning difficulties and would not be able to navigate the hospital. And they then discreetly made an excuse to come with me anyway. this was done so well, but I only know about this because my mum told me. So, on the premise that if you know you are good, and understanding is power, I'm about to tell you my story about my autism. My diagnosis was last year in September, at the age of 25. And anybody who knows anything about autism knows that it is something that you are born with. So you may be wondering at this point why I was diagnosed so late. Now, in a way, I kind of blame my mum. She didn't want me to go to the school for autistic people because she didn't want me to copy or mimic the autistic kids. She wanted me to mimic or copy the normal people in life, the NTs as we call it. So of course she sends me to a school for dyslexic and dyspraxic kids instead, because they're normal apparently. Now, talking about mimicking, the reason why I'm so good at it is because, if you can probably tell by me standing here, I'm fairly good at performing arts. And that is sort of what mimicking is. It is just copying your surroundings. But if you're so good at that, what if I was a zookeeper? Would I start copying the monkeys? Would I come home one day, dressed in a gorilla suit, and instead of answering the question when my mum said to me, "What would you like for dinner?" I'd jump on her shoulders, grab a banana out of her hand and shove it on my head. I sometimes think that after 25 years of mimicking, I can even convince myself that I'm normal. Which you may think is me exaggerating for the purposes of comedy, but I have heard stories of people being diagnosed so late that they have to be trained to be themselves as an autistic person. One of the things that can be difficult about getting a late diagnosis is going through the diagnosis process. I think there's only 2 ways you can take this diagnosis. It's either complete bolt out of the blue, or it all starts to make sense. For me, I was the second one. I thought things like, that's why I don't fit in. That's why if I agree with someone in a debate, or an argument, or a discussion, or just chatting to someone, they think I'm disagreeing and start arguing back. That's why I make people laugh when I wasn't trying to. Now obviously, this is comedy, guys, and I hope you're finding it funny, so don't feel afraid to laugh. And that's why the only one who seems to understand me are my cats. And sometimes I don't think they understand me either. I say things like, "No, my hand is not a chew toy." And it takes one big bite out of them. In fact, you can probably see, look close up, but I have scratches on my hands right now. And I say things like, "No, my face is not a pillow to sit on." And that's not what it would sound like in real life, of course. It would sound a bit more like, now I'm starting to talk about cats, so I should probably explain that anybody who knew me before my diagnosis knew that I was known to be obsessed with cats. Now, if you've got a diagnosis of autism, there's a special term for that. It's called a special interest. But most people just think of it as an obsession. And I think that I take living with an obsession to a whole new level. As an obsession or special interest of autism can be anything and everything you can think of. From the specific to the general, it could be a subject at school like maths, science, history, place on the map, a celeb VIP, a vehicle, and then you can go into it and it could be like cars, and it can be a particular brand of car. But if you like cars, for instance, you don't sleep in your garage every night, do you? And if you love Ferraris, you don't break into the nearest Ferrari garage every night and sleep in one of their Ferraris. But mine is cats, so what do? I live with cats, I spend time with cats, I spend money on cats. I think and do about cats, I sleep with cats. Now obviously, I don't mean sleep with cats in the rude sense. You've got to bear in mind with me, I have speech and language issues. And it's a bit like when you have an old zipper jacket which doesn't fit you very much. If you concentrate on doing the zip, and you take your time, and you take it slowly, then you can get it to fit. But if you rush at it and you don't concentrate, you end up with the bottom of the zip here, and the cockles are in the wrong place, and you've probably got bits of clothing stuck in it too. And it can be incredibly embarrassing because when this happens, it can make you sound like the BFG, or just make you sound really rude and inappropriate by making you make rude and inappropriate jokes or innuendos when you weren't trying to. For example, I was walking a friend's dog, which is a working Cocker Spaniel, and anybody who knows about the breed knows that they're incredibly high-energy dogs. I met a fawning stranger who was fawning over the dog. I meant to say that he was like a Duracell bunny. I said Durex bunny. And it doesn't get much better if you correct yourself in time, or if you know the person and they know you. I went to an animal course and I was talking to someone else who liked cats about my nervous uptight cat at home. And I meant to say that she was neurotic, but I said erotic, which I corrected in time, and she was my friend, so she was laughing in good humour with me. But I still wished that the ground could have swallowed me up. I wanted to die. You can imagine that you spend so much time, money and effort on your special interest, but if you could choose one, you could choose to do something like create a career out of yourself, or work really hard at an ordinary job and work up the ranks, or find love, find a partner and settle down and have a family, probably a house in the suburbs somewhere. And you could possibly even create world peace, or stop Brexit as it might be. But unfortunately you can't. Well, no. What you could have, if you had those, was that you would be rich, successful and famous, or having a family and partner, or a Nobel Prize. But you can't, although I just instead. So what I have instead is at least 3 cats in the house at a time. And I have a house full of cat stuff. And I don't just mean things for the cats like cat food bowls, cat toys, cat scratching posts. I mean cat junk, like pictures and postcards of cats and cat magnets. You may think that if you put your mind to it, you could. But I promise you, you cannot choose. I know a girl who I met at an autism meetup group whose special interest is a bit like having a celeb crush. She would fixate on one or more celebs in the media at the time. And it was a particular meetup. She was worried that she hadn't had one in a while. And with all the politics in the media at the time, she's worried she'd go back to Donald Trump. Which she wasn't in the first place, and she did not win again. So it's not that easy. And you can imagine that if you're so full of the subject in your head, but I like to describe it like water flowing to the lowest point by any means possible, by cracks in whatever it is. And from the outside, that will sound a bit more like the dog from Up. You know the dog from Up? The one that talks about squirrels halfway through the sentence. Hi, how are you? Cats. What have you been up to? Cats. It's a nice weather outside. Oh look, it's a cat. And inside our heads, and if we're going to rant about a subject to you, it will sound a bit more like the rabbit song from Cousin Dave. You know, rabbit, 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 cat, 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 cat. It can be really difficult getting a diagnosis this late. One of the things which I find so confusing is that I don't think there's a part of society which has so much jargon, phrase, acronyms, new specialist terms, and you've got to keep up with them all. I mean, NT, A.S.D, A.S.C, high functioning, low functioning, level 1, level 2, level 145. What the heck does it all mean? I know, but the first thing I was thought of when I was told I had A.S.D was, isn't that a type of illegal drug? NT is a theatre in London, Autistic is Big Brother, and as Asperger just sounds like an asthmatic donkey to me. And to confuse even more, as you're trying to learn them, they take them away, they add more, and it just keeps chopping and changing. For instance, I was told that within the medical sector they no longer use A.S.D, but I don't think us actors have got this memo because I learned A.S.D from an A.S.D. And as well as, not instead of A.S.D, now A.S.C. So instead of saying autism spectrum disorder, it's now autism spectrum condition as well. It reminds me of trying to learn and keep up with things that you learned at school. For instance, at secondary school, I spent 4 years out of 5 learning that electrons are made out of protons, electrons, and neutrons, which we all think is right and simple and easy. It's elementary stuff, right? Literally. But I found out in year 5 that as a boy put it to her, the teacher, "You lied to us, miss!" Because apparently neutrons are just a bunch of protons and electrons stuck together, so they don't really technically exist. And the other one is, does anybody know whether Pluto is a planet or not? Because since I learned at school, it's changed so much that I can't keep up. I mean, it's a planet, it's not a planet, it's a planet, it's an elephant, what is it? I just can't be bothered to keep up anymore. I mean, most confusing part is probably that after years of being oblivious to this, you suddenly jumped in the deep end when you are literally the tug of war rope between NTs and the A.S.D in their community. I know that after years of my mum being my biggest ally as a fellow dyslexic person, I felt like she suddenly became on one end of the rope as an NT, telling me that I should change, pretend, adapt, mimic, generally bend over backwards for the majority of the world, whatever you want to describe it, for the NTs. Well, on the other end was my imaginary friend saying, it's okay to be yourself, and if no one else understands you, that's fine, because we understand you and you understand yourself. Which I don't technically agree with him. You've got to understand, us A.S.Ds are highly paradoxical and hypocritical creatures. Because we don't understand ourselves, or UNTs. Yet we expect UNTs to understand yourselves and us. And it doesn't appear to be any other way. I remember I had a conversation with my mum the other day where I was walking down the street and I said, can you explain that to me as an NT? She said, I can't because I don't understand it, which never occurred to me. It kind of reminds me of the book Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus. You know how men and women work so differently, they might as well just be on different planets? As far as I'm concerned, if men are from Mars, UNTs are from Alpha Centauri. You do things like ask me how I am when you don't give a damn for the answer. Why are you asking? Why are you wasting the time, the energy, the effort, the air around us on asking a question that you don't want to know about? And then why are you surprised when I therefore answer? You asked me a question. I'm supposed to answer, aren't I? Okay, so now comes the tricky bit. This is called originally in the original stand-up a contradiction. Because what I usually mean by me being a contradiction is that I can do really complex, difficult things like write, produce, memorise and perform a long complex play, but I can't do easy things. I can't pack the dishwasher like everybody else. But when I talk about sensory input, what I'm talking about is that there's some things which are counterintuitive about this, and it's a big subject for this. Things which we know are the senses and how they work. That's right, you've got that right. And if you know about autism, You know that people are either hyper or hyposensitive to one or more of these, or possibly both at the same time to one or more of these. And part of what you may be understanding is that if you are hyper or hyposensitive, you'll be looking for more or less of these. What isn't so simple is that it's not necessarily the way around you think it is. You might think that if you're hypersensitive to something, you're seeking less. And if you're hyposensitive, you're seeking more. Well, take hypersensitive, for instance. Actually, it's more like you could be seeking less, but you could also be seeking more, or both, or neither, or a mixture. And vice versa goes with the other way around. For instance, I am hypersensitive to touch. And most people who are autistic, that means they don't like being touched, they don't like being hugged. But I actively seek hugs from my nearest and dearest. I mean, it has to be someone I know and trust. But I actively seek hugs from my mum, for instance, at least 20 times a day. Big, squishy, long hugs and cuddles. And the other one is that I am hypersensitive to the sensation in my mouth, which is why I'm a bit plump now. So that is what hypersensitivity is about, or hypersensitivity. The last thing I want to talk about, and I think definitely not least, is that there are certain co-morbidities to autism, and one of them, one of the well-known ones, is anxiety disorders. For me, it's general anxiety disorder, and as you may know, that means that they are supposed to be linked. For me, they're so linked, they're joined at the hips. I know I have both, and I don't know where one begins and the other ends. To give you an idea what it feels like, think of normal anxiety, like a health and safety inspector in your head, going round, looking at everything you do, say, think, act, whatever, and telling you what the problems could be with it. If you're a bit over-anxious, maybe he's a bit overzealous with his job, or maybe he's yelling it right in your ear at high volumes. If you start to get an anxiety disorder, is when you've got this health and safety inspector, and he's overzealous in his job, and he's yelling it next to your ear in high volumes, and you listen to him. To make you feel a bit like Chicken Little, or the person who cried wolf. I mean, is the sky falling in? Is the sky falling in? Or is it like it was with me, when I died the day before my birthday, around the corner from my house, coming home, getting hit by a car, and I don't live to see my next birthday. The trouble is, as I stated earlier, you get this at birth, and they are linked, so you're likely to get the anxiety at birth too. One of my most common memories of anxiety I ever had was the picture in the middle with the HSBC sign is my childhood safe, my piggy bank. And there's a keyhole there. I was so worried that a robber would come through the window and would steal my pocket money, but I would hide the key in such a strange place that he couldn't find it. I couldn't find it. I would forget where I put it, and I would try and look for it, and I couldn't find it. I would look for hours. In fact, I think the reason why I haven't got it was I must have lost it at least 5 houses ago. To continue the saga of this worry, because there is a saga, does everybody remember this? Obviously it's not this size, but you know we're getting that at Christmas? Well, I would be so worried that about these robbers that I would plot that if they came in from my window hours there, I would give them some of these to fool them. But I'd be so worried that I had they would come in after I've eaten them. But I would save the wrappers and I would fold down the sides and I would have them to give them. On the basis that, okay, so the chocolate money is realistic as it is, and the wrapper's definitely a better substitute, and I'm going to be brave enough to do this anyway, rather than crying from my mum or hiding or possibly a mixture of both. If I had an ounce of both, maybe calling the police would be a better idea. Okay, so that's my story. And the message here is that you're doing things right when you know about them. You've probably got the 80-20 rule sussed, but there is that last pesky 20%. Now don't worry about trying to come up with ideas, because I have a couple. This is where your magical NHS fairy Daisy is here to help. You see, there are two big things I've come with today, which I think will help with this on the learning disabilities level. The first one is easy, simple, out there and ready to use. The other one is not so much. So let's work on the first one, shall we? Now, for anybody who can't see me, there is also a picture of it. I wonder if anybody knows what this is. I wonder if people are thinking things like, what is it? Why is it so bright and colourful and cheery? Maybe it's a bit too bright and colourful and cheery? A bit patronising maybe? Does both green and the sunflowers have a special meaning? Does it have to be sunflowers? Does it have to be green? Could it not be roses and purple? And if you know anything about it already, you're probably thinking it's for general learning disabilities or low functioning like low IQ autism. Well, to a last question at least I can answer that, it's not. But in order to give you a bit more idea of what it's about, I've done a quick quiz. So I wonder if anybody knows the answers to these. So the first question is, and my helpful helpers, is what does it represent? Who is it for? Who wears it? Does anybody know? Hands up. Yep.
It's to tell everybody that you need extra support, but it doesn't say what that support is and why.
Yeah. So it's for hidden disabilities. Any hidden disabilities. Yeah. Can anybody perhaps name any disabilities? I've got some already, which are ones that people might not think of, but does anybody know any ones that might count? Any hidden disabilities? No? We'll go through some of them. These are just some of the most interesting ones. The ones that you wouldn't necessarily think about. Deaf and hard of hearing, I put up there because there is a debate online over this, that because they've got a hearing aid you can see, but I don't generally agree, so I think it should be up there as included. Next question is, what organisations recognise or use or give them out? Does anybody know? Yep.
Yeah, authority.
Yep. Any other ones that people can think of? Yeah.
Travel companies give them out now.
Yeah.
Is it supermarket?
Yeah. So we go through the answers. Yeah. So airports, public transport, supermarkets, and hospitals. So we came to supermarkets. That was one of the answers. Can anybody name a particular chain that might use them?
Aldi.
No? Yeah, Sainsbury's? No? Tesco's, yeah? Not Waitrose, unfortunately. Go up, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to put the 4 up. I find the fact that the Co-op and NHS and M&S are up there really interesting because so Tesco's and Sainsbury's are fairly big chains in both senses of the word. However, unfortunately, some parts of high society don't think they should be inclusive. I'm not a revert snob, because that would be highly critical of me. But unfortunately, it's how some parts of society work. And co-op is a very small chain. So the fact that those two use them is really interesting for me. Okay, so this answer has a prize. Does anybody have any rough estimate on how many airports recognise this? Within the UK? More or less. Any rough number?
20 years.
A bit higher? 34. Yep, 34.
Hey, well done.
Exactly the right number. I mean, it's quite interesting, but it's so even some of the small airports, like Norwich Airport, recognises it. Okay, so the next question is, do other countries recognise this, do you think? Yep. I put down here Ireland, but also Australia is starting to use it, and the resort places like Ibiza and Lanzarote airports are starting to use it. Now, the most important question of all, and this is, you get another prize if you guess this number. How many hospitals do you reckon use this at the moment?
Not enough.
That's probably the right answer. Can you give me a number? No, less than that.
Good, less than 10.
Less than 7?
Come on, Yana.
Less than 5? I'll give you the answer. It's 3!
Oh dear.
Come on, guys, I think this is a bit embarrassing. Given how easy it is to get it is out there, if we can universalise this within NHS, we are halfway there. Okay, so that was the easy bit. The harder bit, I hope you are listening for, because it's a bit more complicated and not as easy to sort out, but it's important for me. I stated earlier that if I or my mum tell you that I need help, if I show you one of these, or there's also a badge in it. But what if we can't? What if my mum can't for some reason, or she forgets, or I forget, or we both forget? What if one of the reasons why I'm forgetting is that I'm having a breakdown, either with anxiety or an autistic type? Does that mean I don't get the help because I haven't told you, so you don't know? Expecting us to have to tell you leads to what I call the petty crime discrimination, indirect discrimination. Now, we all know that discrimination is bad, and we know that, for instance, not having lifts so people can't walk up the stairs is bad. We've got the direct discrimination sorted. But, in my head, if the petty crimes are the lesser kinds of crimes, so the jaywalkers and the short change givers and the penny sweet or pick mixed fingers and eaters are the indirect, petty crimers of crimes. But indirect discrimination is the everyday discrimination of discrimination. Discrimination of, oh, I didn't think. She doesn't look disabled, I think she's not in a wheelchair or anything. Why didn't someone tell me? Or maybe she should have told me, or he should have told me. Why didn't they tell me? But describing jaywalking like indirect discrimination isn't quite right, because jaywalkers are only a danger to themselves. The car's not going to care if it hits you. But it's a bit more like the penny sweets, because people tend to think things like, well, it's only 10 pence I haven't given, or it's only a penny sweet. But if a boy has got only £1 a week pocket money, that's 10% of his pocket money he hasn't got back. And if you have a small shop which hasn't got much business, then that's quite a lot of its profit margin. So I like to think of indirect discrimination like the small bird in the riddle of how to determine what eternity is. Does anybody know this one? If you don't, it goes a bit like this. Every year, a small bird flies to the end of the world and rubs its beak on a mountain. When the mountain is crumbled to a speck of dust, that is the end of eternity. Only for us, it's not a big mountain. It's a much smaller rock or stone. And for us, it's not just one small bird that's flying once a year. It's lots of birds, and maybe some of them, or all of them, are flying more than once a year. So if we can only sort out about 20%, then we can stop these birds rubbing at our very small stone which is crumbling under us. I know that I'm sounding a bit negative here, guys. I know I'm ranting on, but it's really important to me, and I'll tell you why. One of the things is that autism is a very, very wide spectrum, and people only tend to think of the low-functioning, low-IQ autism rather than the Asperger's. And they're very different. You can think of it a bit like the whole spectrum of the feline. They're all underneath the felines, but if you think of the low-functioning like a lap cat, a purebred lap cat, and Aspies as tigers, you wouldn't want a tiger as a lap cat, and you should not put a lap cat into the jungle. My psychologist who gave me my diagnosis put how I felt about this perfectly into words for me. Don't want to be misrepresented. And seen as not something I'm not, and therefore patronised because of this misunderstanding. Hence why having a bracelet which says A.S.D, high IQ autism, so important. Because I get really reluctant to tell people because I don't want to be represented, so I don't like showing my lanyard or showing my medical letters or telling people. And okay, I get it. It's like all minorities, we get insecure about things, and that becomes like a ticking time bomb. I feel it doesn't feel like there isn't been a month which I haven't been defensive of my nearest and dearest because I don't feel like they understand me or they don't get me, or I just feel guilty but I might be a burden on them. So I can get which is hard to deal with us, especially with such a difficult spectrum. One of the phrases people say is that if you know an autistic person, you know an autistic person, you don't know the whole spectrum. But it's important to me about this subject because I've had experienced it. I said I had a breakdown and went to hospital last year. And I said that it was such a bad breakdown, if it was a piece of furniture, you might as well just get rid of it, a new one. I think you described me as a vulnerable adult at that stage. I mean, I'm a vulnerable adult because of my difficulties anyway. But I was definitely one there. But when I went into A&E, they put me at the end of a small corridor out of the way and they shut the curtains and they left me alone. And it wasn't until I had a breakdown, and I don't know to this day what type of breakdown it was, it doesn't really matter. But I got the help I needed, but they started paying attention to me. But the thing is, there's this thing called with or without speech impairment, which determines whether they can communicate or not. So if I couldn't communicate to you, but I am struggling, how do you tell? And I talked about sensory input. One of those, of course, is hearing. So if there's people who are struggling with the amount of bustle and noise in a hospital, especially if you don't know what's going on, and you can't express that, that's really difficult. Look, I want to end on a positive note, so I will just reiterate. You are doing things right here, guys. This is why I'm telling you, because knowledge is power. But I think there is that 20% which we can just be a perfectionist over. And that's what I'm here for. I'm not here to tell you that you're doing things wrong. I'm saying, hey, keep going. I've got some ideas. Now, I'd love to talk to you a bit more about that. But I think time's running out, and I think there's a cat over there, and I want to say hi to it before it goes away. So, see you in a minute.
say, so that was amazing. There was times there you could have heard a pin drop, and I think that's a real sign of how people were engaged. And I think a bit of my reflection for what it's worth, I think your insight, not just into yourself but to people, is incredible, isn't it? And what you've told us about diversity and inclusion, I think that's 20%. I mean, I really want to go away and look at those slides again and, really remember some of those things that you taught us. And sharing your talent, that was amazing. The amount of talent you've got is amazing. You just inspire people. And again, round of applause. We'll be seeing you again on what we call the NHS circuit as well. So, great. Is there anything else you want to?
I don't know, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Okay. And there we go, Angela.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I'm just interested in your ideas
Mhm.
and how we can make it better.
I think it is a tricky one, and that's what I'm trying to get across. But the big thing is that the sunflower scheme is out there. And considering how widespread it is elsewhere, there is no reason that we can't have them. And it's also that's why I disagree, because I went to M&S. I said M&S, I was supposed to be using them, but they don't know what it is. So they've got them, they don't know what it is, and they go together. So that's the big thing. But I think it's just, I know it's a tricky one within the public sector to do it, but it's about communication. If people knew that I was a vulnerable adult, they might have paid attention to me when I went to hospital last year.
Yes, we've got to look at that.
Yep.
Hi, Daisy. Thanks for your presentation. I think it's been really, really insightful. Thanks.
My question to you is, obviously you described getting the diagnosis after quite a significant breakdown, and if I understood you correctly, admission to hospital?
Yes, yeah.
And how straightforward or easy was it to be given the diagnosis of autistic spectrum conditional disorder at 25? Because I think we know that women with A.S.D present differently perhaps, and often maybe are diagnosed later. So I'm interested to know, how straightforward did you find receiving the diagnosis, or did you have to go through a process of other diagnoses being considered and discarded? And then, do you feel you got the appropriate help once you received that diagnosis?
Well, I probably should have said this from the NHS. I actually got mine privately because my understanding from when I've gone to my chat groups is that it's quite difficult to get it on my NHS because I think because of the funding, because of the lack of resources. I think it depends. With people who are high functioning and who are girls, it comes late because it's their choice rather than the parents, because of the mimicking. So it really does depend. Have you got something to say?
Can I answer that? Because I think it's incredibly shocking. I've worked for the NHS and various other bits and pieces, and I retired and I've got a son, and my daughter's not got a bed, which is probably a good thing because it was anxiety. She gets onto the NHS specific anxiety programme, and there's a 26-week waiting list. And so, forgive me, Daisy was impossible to live with. So, Granny, my lump sum, and a discussion with the clinical psychologist who worked locally for the NHS, who said, if you go and pay, you get as many sessions as you need. If you come to us, you get 16. You get 16 in your whole life. And so if you have another breakdown later, you don't get any more, even if you need them. So we went and paid. And if you pay cash, the Priory is cheaper. And when she saw the clinical psychologist, having been through the psychiatrist at the Priory, they recognised that she had autism and suggested she went through a diagnosis. So the reason we are where we are, brutally, is God bless the final salary pension scheme.
That's a bloody powerful message, that.
Hi Daisy, my name's Tricia and I'm a chief nurse in South East Essex. Daisy, when we started the conference today, Ruth May said to us that we need to really focus on workforce and that next year is going to be a big focus. So have you had any thoughts about how we can encourage more people to come into nursing people with learning disabilities?
That's a hard one. I don't know someone who is autistic who is a nurse. I think it goes with the amount of understanding. But I don't think that if we get the understanding right, I don't think we need extras for this. I think it's just about everybody being on the same page.
Yeah.